interestingly enough, that you bring up the solid press conference. I went back and I watched the tape of the Jets, and I have to say that, when I told you yesterday that I would give Zach Wilson a C- on his performance, I firmly believe if it's not that, it may be even a little bit less, simply because the amount of guys that he missed. I mean, it's eye-opening. Just there are guys running wide open that he's missing. And now there are some, I would say, mitigating circumstances and certain issues that took place on the game. There's no doubt that he creates a lot of big plays. There's man, kid is he's got an explosive arm. The ball comes off of his hand like it's shot out of a cannon. There was one particular play where he hits Elijah Moore, where there's nobody around him in the pocket. He just steps back there, and he just rears back and he fires it. And I'm like, man, that's the kid that I think that they have in the building. And then, of course, he's got the touchdown pass to C.J. Uzomah where he's rolling left and throwing back right. Those plays right there, when you look at them and you put them in a little box, you're like, damn, he's got the ability, and he's got great ability, and he's got a flamethrower for an arm. But then there are these situations where he finds himself in where he either leaves the pocket a little bit too early and he doesn't see what's happening in front of him, or he just completely misses where he'll throw a ball over somebody's head or he'll throw it behind somebody. And the one thing that really I worry about a little bit, which is something that's really hard to teach, you either have it or you don't, there's not a lot of touch on these passes.
Well, that's been one of his biggest problems,
right.
And I'm surprised that touchdown pass that he threw was as easy for him, because that's the type of throw that he's normally throwing into the ground or sailing because he's aiming so much.
He's aiming, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. He's aiming, he's trying to be perfect with it, and he just kind of floated it out there, which is fine. He got the job done. That's all that really matters. But there are a couple times where guys are coming across the middle, and the ball is coming like at him 100 miles an hour. No, I said this when I got here at the Jets in 1993. Brownie Nagel was on the team, and he was I think it was a second-round draft pick, like at the top of the second round, and he started his rookie year, and it really didn't go well. It was great in the preseason, then as the season went on, it just got progressively worse because he just wasn't ready yet. But the one thing I remember about Browning is that he threw a ball that was really hard to catch for some reason. Like there was no touch to it or anything. And the nose was down, the ball was spinning, and it was coming at these receivers like it was coming out of a jugs machine. And you don't really want that. Like, and you watched Aaron Rodgers last night, or you watch some of these other quarterbacks, and even Mike White. Mike White throws such a catchable ball because, number one, it's accurate, and number two, it's not coming at you like it's been shot out of a jugs machine. It's kind of melting in the receiver's hands. And he is accurate, especially on the easy throws. I thought Zach missed about 5 or 6 really easy throws that tell me that he's still not there yet. And he's still not there yet, maybe for a lot of different reasons. It could be that he's nervous, that he's not comfortable just yet. And I listened to the station a little bit yesterday and just listening to people talk about it. He's played 21 games in the NFL. 21. That's all he's played. And I know exactly what the Jets see. I could see it too. But I also see the frustration of him just not settling down yet. And I don't know if that will ever happen or when it will happen for him. Like it's happened for Trevor Lawrence really probably in the last 5 weeks. Trevor Lawrence hasn't been great all year long, but the last 3 to 4 weeks, I think he's thrown for over 300 yards in 3 of the 4 weeks.
Was he ever as bad as Zach Wilson at his worst, though?
No. Last year, I would say he was. But then again, mitigating circumstances, coaching situations, and all that other stuff. And I do think that Doug Peterson has brought out the best in him, and he's on now the right trajectory to become really good. Mm-hmm. And there are things that he does on the field where you just say, wow, what an arm, what an athlete. And, he sees over everybody, and he's starting now to finally feel comfortable about what he's seeing. And Zach is not there yet. He's just not there yet. Zach can make big plays, man. Holy crap, he can make some. He is an explosive player. But right now, he's like a bucking bronco. He reminds me a little bit of when Josh Allen was in year 2 for the Bills. And not in the fact that he can run like Josh Allen, because nobody can. And nobody does the stuff that Josh Allen does on the football field because he's a maniac. which is great, which is fine, which is exactly what the Buffalo Bills wanted. But Zach is like right in the middle of where Josh Allen was in terms of his arm strength and his inaccuracies, and the ball's flying high on him, and he's trying to play a little bit too quick. But I can understand why Rob Saleh and Joe Douglas can see, or what they think they see, is a really explosive player.
Well, also, Joe Douglas put his reputation out on the line, drafting this guy number 2 overall. And we've seen this in sports for years and years and years, that these guys want to make sure that their picks end up working out, and they're going to give them all sorts of opportunities. Now, one of the things I found interesting, though, about Rob Saleh, what he said yesterday, is that nobody wants to give Zach Wilson time because we're in the instant coffee era and everything needs to happen right now. Well, he agreed with everybody who said that, Zach Wilson doesn't have, or we don't need to continue to see him play like this. We got to get another quarterback that's in there competent, because they were chasing a playoff spot. So, don't say that all of us are the ones that say, oh, it's the instant coffee era and we need to make sure that, if you're good right away, then awesome. And if you're not, get the hell out of here. I mean, the Jets did the same thing. They made the call to bench him because it wasn't getting it done, because the team around him was good and he wasn't good enough.
And the team didn't like playing with him.
Right.
And they didn't like his actions after that second New England game. But Rob Saleh is in a very, very difficult situation, because I'm telling you, if Mike White wasn't hurt, he'd be playing. Okay? Mike White is hurt. He is not playing. So you either want Flacco or you want Zach Wilson. Who do you want?
Man.
You're going to want Zach Wilson. You got to have Zach Wilson. You got to find out what this kid can do. And the more he plays,
I know, but don't you want to make the playoffs? And I didn't want to see Flacco in the beginning of the year. I wanted no part of him. The way Zach has played, I would rather see Joe Flacco play on Thursday night. I'm telling you right now, I would.
No, you wouldn't.
What do you mean? What, you can't tell me what I want to see or I don't want to see. I'm telling you, I don't want to see Zach Wilson sailing the ball over everybody else's head. I don't want to see him throwing balls into the ground with receivers that are down the line of scrimmage. I don't want to see him with this complete 15-year-old, I don't know what the hell I'm doing look anymore. If the Jets want to make the playoffs, the better quarterback to have them in that situation would be Joe Flacco.
All right, well,
I'm sorry, he's not any good right now.
I'm not going to argue about the way you feel. You feel the way you want to feel. I'm just telling you what the reality of the situation is. And the reality of the situation is, and you hit on it, he is the second overall pick. He is. They got to find out what the hell he is. And, he has shown the ability to play well and make big plays. He's also shown a very struggling side where, whether he has the yips or whether he is inaccurate or whether he's playing the game too fast. But all I know is he's played 21 freaking games. And we're all acting like it's been a 50-game, resume, and it's not. And I know he doesn't help himself. I know that. Or he didn't help himself initially 4 weeks ago. But I'm just telling you, if Mike White were healthy, he'd be playing. He's not playing. He's hurt, and he's not playing Thursday, and he may never play. He may not play again this year. That's a serious injury he has.
Yeah, that stinks.
And again, we don't even know if there's anything else going on other than the rib. There could be, but you're not going to put him out there so he can get hurt again. I will say though, playing Thursday night, there's no way he can play, but there's a potential he could play. At Seattle. That I could see maybe in another 10 days. But, right now, this is Zach's team right at this moment. And, this is a pressure point for Zach because he has to be better. He has to get better. And the other thing, too, is going to be sharing the field with a guy who was drafted right ahead of him in that 2021 draft.
Yeah, I know, which is not a good situation for him, in my opinion, because that's and this is a national TV game, and that's what everybody's going to be talking about. And how when people, up in the owner's box, they're going to have the game on and the TV in there as well. All the articles, because the standalone game, are going to be written about, remember when the Jets won a football game prior to that draft, and then they ended up getting leapfrogged by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Look how that worked out, because Trevor Lawrence just threw 4 touchdowns and Zach Wilson threw 4 interceptions. That's going to be the story. And I don't know. From a locker room standpoint, obviously we know how much they love Mike White and how they had big problems with Zach Wilson, but do you think there's players in there that are like, man, like here we are, we've just gone on this losing streak to get us to 7-7. We have to win out.
And Mike White has been a part of 2 of those games that they lost.
Sure, I know, but he played a hell of a lot better, and he played against the Buff 2 teams that have already clinched their playoff spots and in divisions on the road, by the way, both of those games. So,
I mean, the worst defensive football is Minnesota. How many points did they score in that game? And by the way,
Mike White had. You want to compare Mike White's stats in that game?
At the end of the day, you have to score points.
Right,
that's what the quarterback's all about.
They were bad in the red zone, but let's not act like Mike White is Zach Wilson's anywhere near as good as Mike White is.
I'm just saying the other thing too is that they ran the ball more effectively against Buffalo and against Minnesota and the Bears than they did against this past game against the Detroit Lions. So
what are you telling me? Zach Wilson's better than Mike White?
I didn't say that. I'm just saying that. The object of the quarterback is to get the team in the end zone. That's really what it comes down to. That's why Patrick Mahomes and all these guys at the top of the league are so good. Yeah, they have good players around them, and the quarterback that plays for the Jets, whoever it is going to have good players around them. They got to get him in the end zone, man. It's all about scoring points. Daniel Jones doesn't score a lot of points. Now, he doesn't have a great cast of characters around him.
Sure.
You have Zach Wilson and Mike White. They put up big numbers, but they don't score points. It's ridiculous. I mean, and Zach did have 2 touchdown passes, and he did have the lead. And, it's a frustrating thing watching a young kid trying to grow up. And in defense of Rob Saleh, I don't care what he says right now. Anything he says is going to be taken apart and micro-analyzed, and we can make it into anything we want. So he tried to own up to blowing, the clock. He's trying to navigate a quarterback controversy, which every coach freaking hates, and he's trying to keep his team in it. He's got a million things on his plate. So I think, when I listened to him talk yesterday, I think he's just trying to straddle a line, and he's trying not to somehow ignite a fan base against him or his team or the quarterback.
But what about his team against him? Because, we're talking about...
I think the team really likes him.
I know they really like Rob Saleh, but think about... this whole, we got to make sure that Zach gets it going, and Zach's got to get it going, and we have to kid gloves with Zach, but the team has shown that they hate the guy.
Well,
there's got to be now. But there's got to be talk about that and be like, man, it seems like we're putting this guy's development over trying to make the playoffs now.
Well, here's the thing. Well, they need him to develop if they're going to make the playoffs because he's playing.
Well, but also there's a guy there, there's a veteran there that could be playing too.
That's just a dead end right now. I would not even think about that unless, of course he gets hurt and then Joe can go in there and be the guy. He's just not the guy. You got to find out whether not this kid can play. And, good for the Jets that they do have games that are meaningful here at the end to find out whether or not he can have a breakthrough moment. I mean, I know there are a lot of people out there because like I said, I listen to the station and listen to our callers, and I know that there are people that are so down on him, they want him out of here. He stinks, this, that, and the other thing. And quite frankly, I can understand why that sentiment is out there. But I also understand that 21 games is not a huge sample size. It's just not. It's not realistic. And when Rob Saleh says it's the instant coffee age, what he's just basically saying is that there's an enormous amount of pressure on high draft picks to perform. Like we were talking about that about Kayvon Thibodeau. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, Kayvon Thibodeau, I think, just had his come-to-Jesus moment down in Washington.
Sure.
Like, I could actually do this. I can have 12 tackles. I can have a sack. I can have a forced fumble. I can pick up that fumble and score a touchdown and help my team win because my offense can't score any points.
Now, let me ask you, how many games do you think would be a good barometer? If you keep saying 22 games, whatever, that's all he's played, like what's the amount of games you're like, all right, I'm giving up?
You know what? Here's the thing. I really don't count any of the games from last year because that team stunk. That they had one of the worst rosters in the NFL last year, and you asked a rookie quarterback to go out there and try to play, and then he gets hurt, and then he comes back and he plays reasonably decent at the end of the year, and he gives you a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. Now this year, at the beginning of the year, the team had to find itself. I didn't think it was. We didn't really know what to expect from Garrett Wilson and from Sauce Gardner. And
so, how many games?
If I had to say with this particular team, I would say give me 2 years. Give me two years, 24 to 30 games.
So you're saying
With
2
this
years
particular
meaning
team.
So next year you got to give him a whole nother year next year.
You may have to, yes.
So I'm just looking at like things in the past, like guys who have flamed out that are first round draft choices. And one of the guys I looked up was Jake Locker, because I remember everybody's like, look at this guy. He's got a big arm and he could throw the ball down. He can run. So they gave him 23 starts and then he was out of football.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with the individual himself and the team and the coaching staff and how long the GM's there. All those things that go into it. It's not an exact science. Take a look at Peyton Manning's first year. Take a look at Troy Aikman's first year. Take a look at my first year. I was awful.
Well,
I started.
What about those guys' second years? Because Zach's in his second year and he's gotten worse.
But the thing about, again, each individual situation is different. No two situations are the same. I would say that much like Trevor Lawrence, their team's still losing.
Oh, well, I mean, they're still losing. They've got a 6-8 record right now, but they just beat the Dallas Cowboys and they've won 3 out of their last 4, something like that.
Oh, true, and I don't want to, because I do think that Dallas, when healthy, is one of the better teams in the league, and that was a great win for the Jaguars, and it keeps them in the playoff hunt. But if you ask Jerry will tell you. The Dallas Cowboys right now, as they sit, aren't the Cowboys that were there that went up to Minnesota and hammered your Minnesota Vikings because of all the injuries that they have.
Right, in the secondary, especially the defense.
The secondary, yeah. So, it's not so much, who they are, it's when you play them, right? I mean, that's the thing. My thing is I'm being honest. I didn't think Zach had a great game on Sunday. And when I went back and looked at the all 22 and everything else like that, you could see there are plays that he makes that are like, holy crap, wow. But then there's the lucky play that Michael Carter makes for him where that could have easily been intercepted. And you're like, Jesus, thank God that didn't happen. And then, there are the open wide receivers that are cutting across the middle, Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson, that he misses. And you can see the frustration with those players because the ball's not even close. But then he makes a great throw down the right sideline to Garrett Wilson, puts it right on the numbers, and Garrett Wilson makes a nice catch. And that was a broken play. I mean, so there's a big play there. So that's kind of the rub with Zach Wilson right now. Plus, people will like him because of his personality. Whatever that situation is, that's a whole nother set of circumstances as opposed to just a player on the field.
Yeah, I just think, to me, there's 3 games right off the top of my head where competent quarterback play wins those games for the Jets.
Yeah, 2 New England and Minnesota.
No, I wasn't going to say Minnesota. I was going to say last week against the Detroit Lions, who, by the way, you give the example of Minnesota. I think the Lions actually have a worse defense overall than the Vikings, and Zach Wilson didn't score any points against them.
What their defense has done well over the last 6 to 8 weeks is get turnovers, and they got the interception that ended up, with a field goal. But I will say that, the defense does bear some responsibility. But if you told me that your defense was going to give up, 17 points or less every game, I would think that you would be, right now sitting here with a 10-5 record or 10-4 record.
Right. This is what I'm saying. I mean, it's a competent quarterback play. This team has probably clinched a playoff berth already.
I just also want to say, it is a team game. And I know that this is the most important position. I played it. I know. And I know that there are times where, he's erratic. That's how he's chaotic and he's erratic. And somehow you got to get that chaos and that erratic behavior on the field, and you got to harness it, kind of like Buffalo did with Josh Allen. I'm not saying he's going to be Josh Allen. I'm just telling you, in year 2 of his career, he was chaotic and he was erratic, but he had something that Zach didn't have, and that is the size and the athleticism that if he weren't making plays throwing the ball, he could run the ball and go run people over. And that's not who Zach is.
Yeah, but the problem is there's more Drew Locks, there's more Jake Lockers, there's more Christian Ponders, there's more of those guys than there are Josh Allen.
And you want to know why?
Because it's very hard to get a franchise quarterback, and not everybody has the greatest player in football that they can draft. I mean,
it's the hardest position to master in all professional sports because of the amount of variables that you have to deal with that you have no control of.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, if we're going to bring up the very rare examples of guys starting off shaky and then figuring it out, like, we should acknowledge the fact that there's probably 4 to 1 of the guys that never figure it out.
Well, yeah, 100%. We know that. because we know how difficult it is.
Okay.
And the interesting thing is, like, sometimes guys like Jake Locker and some of these other guys get picked later in the first round because a team feels like they got to go reach for a quarterback, and they should have never been picked in the first round in the first place.
Sure.
And so sometimes their draft status is way overblown because of the needs of the team that picked them. So that's another reason why a lot of those first-round picks never, ever pan out, because they never should have been picked there in the first place.
Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the red bell so you're notified when we have new content.